It's distressing for everyone to come to terms with this evidence, but we must pursue the truth wherever it leads. Look at the evidence and decide for yourself.
All right, welcome back, and here's Richard Gage, fresh from an interview at KPOJ Radio. Now, I tried to listen to that on the AM radio, and it was only a baseball game, so I hope it's rebroadcast. It was on the internet, which is where I got to hear some of it, but you say it was a good one.
We enjoyed it a lot. Adam was quite positive, and we had an hour on a mainstream radio station to really put it out there.
Well, I have a CG of your event tomorrow and Monday. Can you guys put up number 8 and 9 in sequence there, and I'll let you discuss it if you like. The first one's the Eastmoreland one. There you go. And that's
Monday.
Oh, that's Monday. Okay, you got the wrong one. But anyway, this one's at Portland Community College, the Sylvania campus, and there's the Sunday one. That's tomorrow, and that's at the Eastmoreland Theater. So if you're interested, what's that?
At the Moreland Theater.
At the Moreland Theater, excuse me. Okay, anyway, it's all up there. Well, why don't you tell us, the question that I'm always asked is, do you have anything new? And do you?
Yeah, we have evidence not only of the destruction of World Trade Center Building 7, which drops smoothly, symmetrically, straight down into its own footprint, as you just saw. Inescapably, the conclusion is that this building is destroyed in just 6.5 seconds by explosive controlled demolition. This is extremely disturbing information because more than 90% of America's architects and engineers know nothing about this third worst structural failure in modern history. And so when they find out about it, then they're open to the evidence, which is about the destruction of the Twin Towers also on 9/11. So we have to be willing then to look at that evidence squarely. So that's what we're going to be focusing on in this segment of the show. We have lots of evidence that has been withheld from the American people by official sources in the United States government, in the NIST report, the FEMA report, the 9/11 Commission report, that also documents that the Twin Towers themselves were explosively demolished, that the resulting that this is not the result of jet plane impacts and jet fuel fires, but pre-planted devices. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you, Bill.
Now, I have a list of some questions that viewers have sent me, and one of the more common ones is a controversy over those iron-rich microspheres. Now, I did a search on the internet to see, forensic identification of accelerants in, suspected arsons and things like that, and information is not easy to find. But it seems to me that, just the physics of how those microspheres have to be made at such high temperatures and the energy blasting them out, atomizing them into space where they cool before they hit the ground. So that's how they maintain their round structure. They're pulled round by surface tension. And that requires a very, very high heat. And, even if it wasn't from thermite, it had to be from something that produced that high temperature anyway. So the argument, for instance, with I was watching a lot of interviews that you did, and oh, I wish I had his name now, but there was one guy that you were debating with who was trying to direct your answers. You know, he would kind of, no, stop, I don't want any more answers, that's enough, now I'm not going to give you my time, or I'm going to, you know, I just couldn't stand that guy. But he was dodging everything you were saying, and then on the internet it was you know, viciously labeled on the YouTube. But so what do you say to people who don't have a scientific background? You take my word for it? You know, this is physics. Oh, it was Mark Roberts. That's who I'm talking to. I did have it written down. So what's your answer? I mean, how do you deal with it?
We have official sources, the USGS and R.J. Lee, examining the dust laid like a blanket throughout lower Manhattan at 4 to 12 inches thick, 3.5 square mile area of this fine powder, which is pulverized concrete from the Twin Towers floors, 110 floors, completely pulverized to powder. In that powder, they find everywhere these small spheres of previously molten iron.
Put up the PowerPoint, or switch us over to the laptop. There you go.
These are extraordinary. Why? Because it takes over 2,700 degrees to melt iron. Now, we don't have that kind of capability in jet fuel fires or office fires. They only get to be about half that temperature. So this is a huge problem for Mark Roberts or anyone else attempting to debunk the evidence that we find at the World Trade Center towers. These spheres are up to a 1/16 of an inch in diameter, and they are everywhere, and they are unexplained. Now, how do you get previously molten iron microspheres in a spherical shape through all the World Trade Center dust? This is the only rational explanation, is that they are formed by thermite. Thermite is an incendiary that is used to cut through steel like a hot knife through butter. So if there were thousands of explosive charges going off in the towers with incendiary devices, that would explain not only the pools of molten iron found in the debris pile of all three skyscrapers, but it would explain these microspheres as well as the molten iron pouring out of the tower just minutes before the South Tower's collapse. Molten steel, it looks like. Look at the XEDS graphs. In other words, what are these spheres composed of? They're composed of the exact same chemicals that are found in normal thermite experiments. Iron, aluminum, oxygen, manganese, silica. This material should not be there, and it's completely unexplained. What else do they find in the World Trade Center dust? These are chips, nanothermite chips. They should not be there either. Unignited, sophisticated, energetic materials. The red side of these dual layer chips is composed of iron oxide, again, and aluminum powders. But these chips are finely ground. And if we look at 50,000 times, for instance, what we see is rhomboidal crystalline shapes of iron oxide powder that is 1,000 times smaller than a human hair. This is extremely sophisticated material, along with the nanoparticles of aluminum that are intimately mixed and in the perfect proportion to become thermite. They're set in an organic bed of oxygen, silica, and carbon, which can produce the gas generating or explosive properties of these amazing particles. Now, when Dr. Jones and Harrod put these chips into a differential scanning calorimeter, which is a heater basically, they ignite at about 420 degrees centigrade, as you can see here, which is the exact same thing what the documented literature shows that nanothermite is supposed to do.
And the sharpness of the spike shows the high release of energy very quickly.
Indeed. And when that happens, guess what? it produces in the DSC, the heater, iron microspheres. And guess what those iron microspheres are composed of? The exact same signature element that officials found in the iron microspheres in all the World Trade Center dust.
Now, even though they were found by, these other agencies, I've heard accusations that all this stuff is just planted. But it occurs to me that like the Mount St. Helens erupted here in 1981, and it produced mountains of ash that they just kind of bulldozed off somewhere. But you can still go and dig that ash and find the exact ash that had fallen. The same thing with the World Trade Center dust. They had to take tons and tons of this ash somewhere, and if somebody thinks this isn't genuine, we can dig anywhere in that ash and duplicate the results. Like, if anything about Dr. Jones' estimate of 10,000 pounds or tons or whatever, that was a tremendous number for the weight of the thermite in that debris.
Oh yeah.
Even just a small percentage, the debris was so great that it's a huge number. I like Niels Harriot's answer when he was asked, well, how would they get all that into the building to plant the explosives? And he said, I'd do it on pallets. I mean,
right. Well, these pallets would have had to have come through security, so we certainly want an investigation of the security company at the World Trade Center. And we would want an investigation of A.I.A Elevator. Why? Because A.I.A Elevator was the elevator company who was responsible for modernizing the elevators in the largest elevator modernization, which was going on the 9 months prior to 9/11. This would have given them access, needed access to the core columns and beams in the building. And this is why we want an investigation of them as well.
There's something I wanted to ask you. I took statics and dynamics in college and everything, but I didn't do anything about building with steel, where you always hear about overrating. If it takes so much steel to hold up this much weight, then you have an overrating factor for safety. And I've heard numbers for the Trade Center Tower ranging from 2 to 20. Now, the people that say, oh, the fires got hot enough so that the steel got soft and somehow they went like that, but anyway, even assuming that the fires could get hot enough to that 50% strength that they keep touting, with the overrating factor, even with a 50% reduction in strength, wouldn't it still have like 5 times more than necessary to keep standing? I mean, how does that overrating factor work? Does it apply when you heat up the metal too?
Well,
and what was the factor? Do you know? I've heard 20, and I've heard 5, and I've heard 2.
Yeah, these buildings were well over designed by a factor of 2 to 5. In the case of 20, it's the live loads that the perimeter structure can handle 20 times more than is necessary.
707s.
Yes, and when there is fire, steel can weaken. But these fires, by NIST's own analysis, only achieved 500 or 600 degree temperatures.
And that was Fahrenheit, right?
That's the fires, Fahrenheit, yes. And so we don't even have temperatures hot enough to soften the steel, much less melt it. Yet we have abundant evidence from first responders and others who find these pools of molten iron seen in the World Trade Center debris piles under all 3 towers, including the engineer himself of the World Trade Center, Leslie Robertson, finds, quote, a little river of steel flowing. We have abundant examples of this, and yet NIST flatly denies the molten metal evidence. And why? Because they can't account for these temperatures with the official story. Jet fuel fires, office fires do not create those kinds of temperatures.
The problem with the official story, well, it's just about everything is a problem with the official story, but I got a number of questions to ask, but I wanted